Basic, he's a tutor.
I'm not sure what you mean, but I agree with you. Though they couldn't crack fashion because they would not be able to make something as cool as this.
Right?
Like I said, people want to do things.
Was it not that?
He did things.
Hello everyone, welcome to the To Synapse Pod. So glad to have all of you here and introducing all my besties again. That's Paras, that's Saransh, that's Manik. Avinash is joining us remotely today. So today guys, we have some interesting topics to discuss with you all, just like every other week. Some new events have happened in the world of big corporations. I wouldn't call Amazon a startup now. Still they say that it's day one. So yeah, so we're gonna take care of topics from Amazon to the mass layoffs that we are going to have in the future, as well as what we have had in the recent past weeks in the Indian startup ecosystem, and then we are going to cover why these layoffs are happening, what is the cause of it, and what people like you, me, all of us can do so that we don't lose our jobs. So we'll start off with Amazon, right? And so Saransh, would you like to tell what is the big news about Amazon?
Yeah, so it's finally official that Bezos has finally stepped down as the CEO of Amazon, right? And new people are going to fill the shoes. So big news. Someone who has been heading the company for about, I think, more than 22 years now?
Yeah,
28. Wow, 28, 77 years, and then finally, he's obviously taken the company to a mammoth. I don't know, like how many companies he's opened within that same branch, scales that he's achieved with each of those businesses, and finally deciding to venture into new passions, follow new passions. I'm sure, more into, I think, space exploration and other things, right? And he decides
the rockets.
yeah. So the rockets. Let's see what all new passions he has, because he said that I want to take on more time from my other passions, right, and explore in those directions.
So what he's done is he's told now that he's going to become an executive chair, which we all know what it means, right? A lot of free time. So he stepped down as CEO. So what are your guys? What are your big thoughts that where would the Bezos time be spent now in the next, let's say, 5 years, 10 years? Is he going to go head on with Elon, creating his big rockets?
It's about time, no? Blue Origin. No, but I'll tell you what, I'll share an anecdote with you about this Amazon thing, which happened right this morning. So my dad suddenly calls me and he's like, Paras, have you seen Amazon stock? It has gone down because the CEO has stepped down. I was like, how down it has gone? It's like, it's 95% down. Then I got to know it was a stock split. So I had to explain him that Amazon had gone through a stock split. That's why the share price was down from like $2,200 to $120. Yeah. He thought Bezos getting down can get the stock down by 95%.
Company evaporated.
I want to say something about it. That before we talk about that what will Bezos be doing next, I think something that is a huge thing which happens in the US startup ecosystem is that the founder actually continues to be the CEO. He reinvents himself again and again with the changing environment, with the changing situations, and yet he proves it. So I think that's very inspiring, first of all, when we see Mark Zuckerberg, people like Elon Musk, and now even Jeff Bezos, who retains as a CEO for such a long time. Otherwise, we always hear it, right? That as a company grows and it dilutes too much, that usually the investors decide that who should be the new CEO, and founder sometimes becomes irrelevant for that growth. So I think that's kudos to Jeff Bezos on that, first of all, and yeah, it's very inspiring in that way.
Actually, Avinash, just wanted to tell you guys, in '97, Jeff and the board at that point of time decided that Jeff would not be the best person to be the CEO, and he did step down for 2 to 3 months. And I think that's where John Doerr gets the legendary status that he does, where he came back and said, no, Jeff should be the CEO again. Like, the other guy is not capable enough to be the CEO position. I think that was the first time when he was having a child.
and that is when he took a break and he was deciding does he still want to be the CEO or there could be someone else. I think what's the best culture in the Valley is the fact that the founders wants the company to grow irrespective. So they're not attached to the CEO position, but sometimes they are the best people to run it. There is no denying the fact that the vision a founder can have is not easy to replicate, or the enthusiasm for everything is very difficult. And it's, I mean, we can see it, right? Like we know for a fact how it's also the motivation and the long-term game we can think of. Most people don't think in the long-term sense. Most people are very short-term players. When you're playing a short-term game, you expect short-term results, and that is where the founder vision comes into play. Because then, if you even start a company, you're thinking of 10 years minimum. At
Wow, I
least.
didn't know that. That's crazy.
Yeah, I think something very beautiful is happening here, that you are trying to jump to future, and I think every founder has learned so much from Jeff Bezos without meeting him ever, that we want to talk about what he has done first, than jumping it straight. Like his letters are work of art.
Absolutely. And recently I was just reading his shareholder letter, which he has posted as the last shareholder letter as a CEO, and he's literally jotted down the kind of wealth he has created, and of course his team and everyone at Amazon, split by split for shareholders. It was around 20 billion. For employees, it was around 35 billion. For back-end supply, 95 billion. And then for the end customer, 115 billion. The kind of discounting and cost saving and everything. So he said that in around 2020, from 2020 pandemic till now, the company has created around $310 billion of net wealth for all of these people, and that is why he runs what he runs, and that was his whole vision, right? It's not only driving on profits and the money in the bank or what you take home, it's ultimately that crazy passion to bloody show up every day and fucking do shit.
Probably the numbers even don't do the justice to it. Probably the impact is much more. I'm
Yeah.
very sure the values created in the world is much more than the valuation that Amazon commands today.
He created an entire industry already, right? So at the end of the day,
Leaf Studios as a venture is a product that didn't start on Amazon.
He built Leaf on top of Amazon, and imagine how many such Leafs he has helped kickstart.
OnePlus has been practically
Forget
built on Amazon.
Leaf. Forget. I mean, I don't know. We can't never forget Leaf. Sorry guys, my bad. Never forget Leaf. But look at the AWS, because we are looking at that from a very e-commerce viewpoint. But look at AWS, and the current CEO kind of justifies that AWS is bigger than the Amazon itself, and the amount of companies which have scaled on AWS. It's so much simpler to open a SaaS company right now than the internet boom when you had to actually buy servers. Can you imagine like your majority cost in your, I was reading up a book and I read like the majority cost of our investment is to buy servers. And it never made sense. Why will you buy servers? You need to understand what Amazon has done. It's done something which has democratized technology being utilized in a way. Specifically AWS. I think AWS was a game changer. It still is. I think there are other platforms which has caught up to it, but it still provides I give $100,000 of credit to every startup for 3 years.
One point that I remember very discreetly was that one of the top management of Swiggy was talking about that they need to find their AWS. If you just understand from that angle, that AWS became the cash generating wing for Amazon at such a big scale.
Why can't you say cow? Why can't you say cash cow? What is wrong with saying cash cow? Politically correct suddenly. You can't call it a cash cow.
And I think this cow has become so huge that it can't be called as a cash cow anymore.
Yeah, it's as huge as the dairy industry in the world.
Yeah, but what I'm always inspired by, and I like to live by those rules as well, like the kind of long-term thinking of Jeff Bezos, right? He does not think on the scale of 2 years, 3 years. He thinks on the scales of decades. 10 years is bare minimum on what he'll think. Just to be at that stage where you're commanding a company of $1.6 trillion or more, and thinking on the scale of decades, not 10, 20, 30, probably 50 years, and having that insight and intellect in this rapidly changing world which changes every 2 years, right?
To deliver this.
Yeah, to deliver what he has sought, it is insane, man. Like, just imagine what it takes to be that.
Now that you've said that, right, like I was thinking of everything which Amazon hasn't done well. Look at the Fire. Everyone remember the Fire phone, which they had launched?
The Fire phone.
The amount of failed experiments that define Amazon, and yet the successful ones are crazy huge, right? AWS happened because there were 10 different things which failed.
Yeah.
I think the amount of risk-taking ability to have the balls to fail over and over again.
At that size.
At that size, at that scale,
Yeah.
when you're also an IPO company, when you're listed down, when everyone's going to ask you questions.
Yeah.
Most people don't experiment that often.
Yeah. Also like the shareholder value is so Jeff always says that we can be judged by our past, but we can never create value by our past, right?
Absolutely.
So he says that the real value which we're going to create is represented as the stock price based on future earnings discounted to present date. And when you think on 50-year scale, just imagine the kind of value you can create. And
That's
come
what
on.
I think, like, the category creators, right? At the end, like Alexa, a new category, right? People then started creating. I think Alexa was the first part, right? Google came out a little later.
Yeah.
Google's part.
I mean, it was almost at the same time
Yeah.
because Google Assistant was there, there was Siri also. They didn't think of it in a speaker format.
Yeah, but that's what changed it, right? Because at the end, embedding
It
that
was
into
Nest
physical
actually.
devices.
It was Nest which changed it. Which
Yeah,
did not well.
like getting it to the scale of an Alexa and then into, I think now they're venturing into all the smart kitchenware.
Yeah.
And, so, I think that's going to be a huge business. AWS obviously.
Funny how I read it once that he doesn't even take care of these decisions because these don't lie in that window of 10 years. These are already happening.
These are absolutely like
These are
5,
happening.
yeah, 2, 3, 5 years.
So my job is to take decisions about things which will pan out years later, not tomorrow.
I just can't even understand the
Do you
kind of
guys
intellect.
know any like one couple of decisions that you took that were like 10 years?
Yes, I know one. So Amazon has invested $1 billion in this. Amazon on the backbone is a transportation company, guys. Right? It moves goods.
Yeah.
It is invested in Rivian, which is a autonomous trucking company. $1 billion, right? And this he invested about 5-6 years ago.
What's the autonomous company? Is it like self-driven?
Yeah.
Self-driven.
Trucks.
Yes,
And
yes.
the
Autonomous
biggest
trucks.
IPO.
Drones, they will start investing very early.
And then at the bare basic, he's a motherfucking executor. Like, he would go hard at it because, and then he would do that shit by stepping in with his own bare hands, is what I've felt always with respect to any new project. And I still know that whenever a new project starts, he goes into it himself. Very similar to what Elon does, right? But Elon does it 10x better because he becomes the chief engineering officer and the CTO. What is it called? The chief of coin? No. That was not. What was his title?
Being engineers, you.
Master of coin was not his title.
I'm not sure what you mean, but I
Yeah.
agree with you. Though I.
Chief engineering officer.
Yeah.
No,
They use that
He used a very
Gauge
term.
reference.
Yes. But like, I don't agree with you. I think Elon and Jeff are two very different people.
Right.
And I don't say one is better than the other because both have created or accumulated wealth over a period of time in very different manners, in a very different environment. I think Elon could do a lot of things he could because Jeff existed, not the other way around. Like when Amazon started in '94, it was a game changer. And the struggles of, because they were pre-internet bubbles phase, right? They were 5 years before the pre-internet bubble had actually expanded. Netscape had just happened and it crashed. They went through all of that. They went through the internet bubble. They went through the 2008 recession, and they are still strong. Whereas Elon or even Tesla, right? Like Elon has had successes and then he's stayed low for a while, then gone ahead and did something. I think it's a different journey. I don't want to compare either of it. I don't even want to compare how they built teams because they've both built fantastic teams.
Yeah.
And the cultures are different. Culture reflects you. And both of the, like, we have friends in Amazon, right? Being engineers, you do have friends in Amazon and you do have friends in SpaceX. And the culture kind of reflects who they are.
Yeah. So in fact, I hear two kinds of narratives with respect to culture of Amazon, right? One is that they're fucking hardcore. They make people cry on supply lines, and people do not see their family for days. On the second hand, Amazon has launched this has invested $1 billion in their initiative called Working Well, where they are enabling a lot of work from home and remote jobs. And our friends tell that it's a beautiful culture, exactly what we have heard. So I am kind of confused on what is the truth or the reality, if anyone has any.
The best
Right.
part about the truth and the reality for the whole thing, because I've had friends who actually are absolutely, bullshit about the whole Amazon culture, and I have friends, common friends, who are really happy about Amazon and the culture they had. So it depends a lot on the individual at that level, at that scale. If you're not L8 or L9, right? If you're not talking to Jeff, you don't really know what the culture is, but it does seep in. Because majority of the people are still happy and still wanting to work in Amazon. It's not like a mass revolt happening, right? There have been times when you've all heard about different companies where people just want to leave it. I'm not going to say the names out. I'm not going to say the names out, even if I want to. But there are things which Amazon does well. So just leave it on the culture, leave it on the bad bosses.
I think there is also a very employee founder culture fit.
Yeah.
And most of the people who I've heard badmouth Amazon are not very hardcore executors, at least in my close circle. So I think
Yeah,
the
these
DNA of the company is.
So the truth is they move the metrics. The truth is they compound year on year.
Yeah.
The truth is their stock I don't think is overvalued, and despite that, look at the compounding that they have done. So I mean, a company with a horrible culture can't do such consistent growth over decades, is what I'm trying to say. Bad culture can take you only so far. If it was really that bad, how would a company compound over 20-25 years?
So I think generalizing hardworking as a culture, like people have to kind of grind a little more, right? You can't just term it as a, obviously like a bad culture. So I think I agree to your point. Like, obviously they've achieved like what is the growth? Like in 5 years, I think they've multiplied the share by like multifolds, right? Like, but I think one of the Google, Amazon, and those are the two stocks that have kind of moved in at least the tech the most in the last 5 years.
Let's get the exact number and put a ticker. This might be what has happened.
On that topic, guys, before we shift to the next one, I'm just surprised that no one on this pod has mentioned my wacky shirt.
No, it's
Yes, I'm like doing a lot of
Yeah.
music.
There's a reason why Amazon didn't get into clothing, right? They couldn't track fashion because they would not be able to make something as cool as this.
Right?
So fashion should be left.
I think, guys, we were also talking about the future of
Yeah.
where Amazon will head.
We should talk about that. We'll cut something in between them, which is stretching.
Sure.
Stretching.
So who wants to take a call?
Go on.
Yeah.
Let's go.
I read about this company called Altos Lab, I think, something like that, where Jeff Bezos invested about increasing the life of like human life, personally, like longevity per se. So that is one place where I think all the billionaires actually think of going into, whether it's neuroscience plus biotech plus So I think that's definitely one of the prime future where Amazon will be heading to, or at least Jeff Bezos will be heading to.
I think Google also has something called Calico, where they invested a lot of money. It's mainly on anti-aging. They're trying to work with a lot of telomeres, where they will stop the oxidation of aging cells, and then of course, like I feel there are 3 or 4 sectors where every mega billionaire is taking a bet. One that is anti-aging, space tech, then transportation, cheap and energy. 4 is definitely what I've seen.
Yeah, because it also relates with what's happening, right? So I definitely agree with what Avinash said. 100 will be the new 60s is a terminology which is pretty common in Silicon Valley, and it's something which I've heard a lot of people say. 100 will be the new 60s. And look at all the billionaires, they're all 60s right now. They do want to live to 100 years of age and continue with that same body strength and vigor, right? You don't want to kind of derail yourself.
I think we are aligned with that. That when enough money pours into a problem, right,
It's
you need
solved.
to figure it out.
No, I'll tell you, I've boiled it down. I've been thinking about this. There are a few things in life that you have to do, like running a company like Amazon. And then there are things that you want to do, which is what Elon Musk does, despite being a CEO. So I think now is the moment when he's jumping into things he wants to do. Like, I'm sure he would have wanted to do Amazon also, but not for 25 years. Now, you can do things, and probably that's why everyone does the same, because everyone wants to do the same.
Do you think that's the reason why he got a divorce?
Like I said, people want to do things.
Was it all planned? Now
He
he's-
did things, right? Like whatever it was, like he still has a girlfriend from that era. So, or maybe not.
Did you know that? I don't know.
Is that the reason why he's suddenly become very vocal on Twitter and now he kind of holds Joe Biden accountable for what he says, right? So, Bezos has never been the kind of person who will bash some public figures.
Yeah, he's always very
on
politically
social media.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now he's gone all out on Biden, right?
I mean, he went all out against Trump also, no?
Yeah. So I think he started coming
He
out of
doesn't
the
care.
shell. Now coming out to what he actually wants to.
Can he
be
run
a
for president?
Bezos. Does he have that kind of personality? Like Elon has that kind of personality that people will go out and work
He's a
with.
South African living in US.
With the flat earthers support him.
I think there are enough middle class or low middle class Americans who hate Bezos because he really made them work hard in his sectors. So
Give him jobs though.
he gave them jobs, but
Yeah.
I think that's the audience who hates him. So I don't think so. He has the political bandwidth or the charisma to pull it off.
Yeah.
I never know. I mean, political bandwidth or charisma is something which is built in today's day.
You guess we'll have to see. Perfect. On to the
But
next
if you
one.
heard it here first, guys.
Manik is rooting for Bezos. I'm rooting for Kanye West, by the way, for the American presidency.
I'm rooting for Kim Kardashian.
Like we can do a bet, side bet, guys, away from the camera.
What do you think? She'll never win.
I think
That's
she-
what they thought about Donald Trump also.
We were betting on how lame can the country get.
Yeah.
The world is still keeping up with the Kardashians.
So guys, we should keep some topics for our country, India. So we all have known that we are having insane amount of layoffs, right?
Not at all. So
And
very sad about
all the
it.
good startups are blazing guns on their own employees and firing them. So what is happening? Who wants to go for this?
And it's just not the startups. Bigger players are also doing it. They're just doing it in a hidden manner. Very recently is when I got to know that there have been layoffs in a couple of the banks also. Some of the banks are also firing people. It's just not that it's out in the open yet. So can't reveal the source, can't tell who's doing that. But there have been layoffs which are happening across the
What
industry.
levels and which domains? Like,
I think it's been all across. I think it's just the cutting of the fat. Whenever things go tight, right? Like everyone wants to sit tight on it. So I think that's what's happening. So there's restructuring happening, and specifically the tech startups. Like let's just go there because you heard of Uday, you heard of Lido, you
get
heard
shut down. A few of them.
of shut down. 10 million, right? Like
Yeah.
took 10 million and returned the money. So that was Uday. Balls to the founder. Always respect returning the money back to the investor. Even Lido Learning, that those guys shut down. Then Vedantu and Unacademy, I think they were just trimming their facts. It was just before the winter comes where the funding is not easy to get, specifically at a unicorn level, right? Where the funding is tough, you want to make sure that you're sustainable for long and you have the bandwidth to do so. And how you do that is when you shred the fat off. So the first team which generally goes is the customers, research and user research is what I have heard. The user research is the first team to go. The next team that goes is the marketing. That's what comes down. And only thing which I think everyone is hoping from is that the tech salaries come under control because of these layoffs.
I think EdTech was hit by both the sides, right? Like one is obviously like during COVID, the kind of boom that they saw in their numbers, metrics, right? That was something that no one could even imagine, right? And like post, I think once lockdown started opening up in 2022, the metrics were pretty much flatlined. Some of them even saw some degrowth in terms of month-on-month numbers of sales or everything that they're generating. So when you are, obviously once you have taken growth multiples, keeping COVID numbers in mind, right, and then your numbers become flatline, obviously it's very difficult base to maintain. They probably will drop also. It becomes very difficult to raise around. Then you don't, and plus then obviously second situation is the macroeconomic situation altogether, right? Then you don't have any option but to cut down costs to kind of maintain that at least at a P&L level to maintain some sanity, right? And yeah, I think marketing expense, which is primarily to acquire users, the kind of discounting that was offered, that's the first one to go off. And then I think second is the people cost that they start trimming.
It's the CAC also, right?
That could obviously go down, yeah, but that's because competitors stop doing any marketing.
Yeah, so no more IPL ads is what you're thinking.
So of course, laying off is never a happy news. It's a very sad news for overall, and no founder in my known will ever think that they could ever reach that point. So laying off is definitely a very hard thing for everyone, not only for employees but also for the founders. And when I'm trying to understand, where this is coming from, so we plan quarter on quarter with certain goals, with certain growth metrics, right? And you get the team in place to address to that growth, right? So but when the, as you said, as in the last 1 month we have seen every bigger VC, from early stage YC to Sequoia to SoftBank, everyone is sending out messages that guys, recession is coming, make sure you have enough cash in your bank to sustain. So I think that kind of trickle downs, and team starts to cut off all the side project they were banking on, or every kind of innovation research. So it does slow down, and but there's always also a silver lining, that it is a kind of a recorrecting, where whether it is the right hiring, whether it is the I would say the employees employability factor comes into picture, and the skills that really matter. So yeah, I personally think that something is brewing, and a lot of companies have come out of this stronger and better.
Which next
Yeah, I
company do you guys?
have. I'll just complete my take on this. I have zero empathy for the founders. I think it's just bullshit. What is this? It's not a AWS server that you scale down just because something has changed. I understand the narrative where you say growth comes at a cost of inefficiencies, like at the cost of efficiency, like things do become inefficient when you're looking for exponential growth. But I totally disagree that inefficiency should be people.
Yeah.
Like, good. One, you hire the candidate saying you are playing the game of decades. Then you fire at the first hint of a recession coming up, not even fully here or arguably here or fully here. Long story short, why did you hire so many people in the first place if you didn't have a long enough runway?
There are 2 points to that. One is we all know what happened during COVID, right? Every edtech startup saw 5, 10x, 20x growth organically, without even burning money, right? So either the founder, and I wouldn't agree that I don't have empathy with the founders in this case, because the founders have two choices. One, either you go head on with the other fucker who's trying to burn in dollars, right, and try to compete with them for market share. That's one. Or and they could only throw either brains at the problem or people at the problem. They just decided it's easier to throw people at the problem.
That's why I don't have any empathy.
I get it,
But
but imagine taking time out to throw brains at a problem where you're already in a race where you know that it can be solved by throwing dollars over people. Why, as a founder, wouldn't you do it? And now, if the market is correcting, recession is coming, people would trim out the fat, and things would, and not only companies. Every business operation inside the company would also trim. So don't you think so? It's like a natural progression, which it's just a blip in the long story. And,
I mean, if you
and this has happened many times.
See, if you see, yeah, good. But if you see top bottom, it looks like a blip. See the bottom up. When you say 10% of the workforce was laid off, cool. 10,000 people were laid off. Okay, 10,000 people who were earning X lakhs per month were laid off. The problems looks even more serious, right? Every time someone is laid off, it affects a lot of people behind, right? These people are the ones who spend that money on something which become part of the.
My counter question to you is: Elon Musk just laid off 10,000 people from Tesla.
Yeah.
That's
Announced,
right?
not
Announced.
done.
Yeah.
He's announced.
Around 10% probably, right? So, would you support a founder so that he can survive his enterprise for the long-term benefit of the world and the kind of change he's trying to make over this factor that he has to trim down a certain fat at a certain point in time? Or would you go against him in terms of telling, hey, you are such a villain, why did you do this? You suddenly impacted 10,000 people who you shouldn't have hired, and try to make him the villain or the evil enemy. So what would your take be?
No, so when the knife is to your throat, then you do what you have to do. My problem is why did it come to that stage? Either you hire people saying at the first hint of a funding slowdown, you are the ones going out, or some of you are going out. But you hire them saying you are playing a decadal game, we'll give you stock options, we'll build this, we'll build that. Then your hiring plan is not at all aligned with your narrative.
Yeah.
Like I know about good companies who have, let's say 100 million plus valuation. These people have a lot of workforce. Still have runways of like good 7-8 years. Great man, have that kind of a thing. Great did not fire anyone.
I know some other companies who didn't fire, and man, mostly what I've seen is B2B SaaS or tech has held very strong even in this way.
B2B
But what
SaaS
people
not really.
like B2C has definitely taken the major hit.
If the top line of the business is going down, it's understandable that the projections you were seeing suddenly have moved haywire. Funding slowdown is going to come, and then you are doing layoffs because you didn't plan your raise well in advance. You didn't have enough runways. Your top line is still on the upward trend, but you are firing people.
I think
That's just
uncertainty,
that's just horrible planning.
But it's uncertainty, right? Like someone might have planned their fundraising, let's say 12 months from now, but now when the situation boils down to the fact that they're unaware, like what will happen in 12 to 18 months, they have to revise their plans. Now, first thing probably that happens is they were doing some, let's say, moonshot projects or some side experiments as growth experiments, right? They have to shut those down first. Like they were trying to create, let's say, additional verticals which would have given that growth boost, right? So they will have to shut down those because they were never their core businesses that could contribute, or they were not yet, let's say, anywhere near profitability. They were still figuring out those models. So at this point, probably it made logical sense to them to shut them down. Once they have the money or once the stability comes back, they can probably restart a few of them.
But sometimes people have not gone out of moonshots. People have gone out of the basic BAUs.
No,
Business as usual.
Bezos shut down the entire grocery business, right? It was something that was almost they were
Yeah,
trying
so,
to figure
so
out
I
a new
would say
vertical.
some kind of new initiatives, but the major layoffs, what I'm seeing is from existing running business, and what the founders are trying to do is definitely optimize their revenue per employee. That is the only North Star metric which every founder is looking at, and they're trying to optimize on the amount of money that the company is
Depends on the
making.
company. Yeah, I mean, which
I mean,
company
yes,
stage
if the company is early stage, because survival is very important, everything is justified. Okay. My problem starts I have this zero empathy for founders. Is that these founders who are like 100 million plus valuation companies. Fundraising is clearly not the problem. You have hired people without a good plan. You have hired people without a good runway, and the first hint of slowdown, you are firing them. I think this is still horrible planning. Moonshot projects were also built with the vision of decadal growth, right? Suddenly, how can I slow down then cut everything out? Because your planning was based on the fact that you are going to raise again in 2 years, 3 years, you don't need 7-8 years. You hired wrong, and then you fired wrong. And then you spend so much of the company's capital and energy and focus on hiring people, attracting them, and then you fire that person. It's inefficient for the business itself.
Yeah.
See, I don't think a lot of firms have a choice also in that sense.
Both Tesla and Coinbase had a long runway technically. Even a company called IRL, they have a long runway. Then still they laid off a lot of people. So I don't understand, is it directly related to runway only, or what is the thing going on when it's about laying off?
I agree with Avinash on this. This is where I wanted to actually come in also. Let's just talk not about founders or startups, right? What about established businesses? Anything which is a right to is not a startup. Tesla is not a startup, guys. Like the first half of the podcast, we said Amazon is not a startup, right? I think everyone agrees Tesla is not a startup.
I don't, but okay, I see what you are saying. Cool.
Yeah. Sorry, guys.
Cut.
Synapse Pod dog friendly.
Okay, restart.
So, if you can imagine that if whatever saying was, if Tesla is not a startup, then what happens? If you don't consider, like, we should not give the leeways to public companies at all. We shouldn't give leeways to the fact that you're humongous and you're doing things which, I mean, Netflix fires 10,000 people tomorrow, right? Like, because Netflix stock has been crashing and it's just going down and down. And there are different reasons, and they have been seeing a degrowth since the pandemic, and they've had different challenges and different visions. I don't see sincerity towards that founder because I think that can be planned out. But it's also the cycle of life. The Fortune 500 company changes every decade.
Yeah.
only the tech companies have survived to actually be there in 2.5 decades which exist. So if every 10 years the Fortune 500 companies are different companies that exist, that means somewhere some people got fired and somewhere some other people got hired.
Some place else, you see, some other businesses where the value got created, and obviously that means there were some businesses that created less value. But yeah, point taken. I think the public companies will also kind of cut down their costs. At the end of the day, it's value to some shareholder, whether it's a VC, whether it's a common person, a retail investor, or banker, whatever. But at the end of the day, you have to at this point in time tell them that hey, you're taking some action to make sure that the business health remains. Like at the end of the day, FMCG companies right now are absorbing all the input costs, right?
Yeah.
And there's an article that came out today that they've decided that they would not be increasing the prices of their sachet products, right? Like 2 rupees, 5 rupees products, and they will not also be decreasing the grams per unit. So that means it's a business call. A lot of FMCGs have taken that they are going to absorb the hit, right? Now that is not something that the business shareholder of that company would be happy with. The moment you hear that, there is obviously a lot of selling. The FMCG stocks have fallen down, and that those things will happen. The company will lose. So I think for a founder right now, at what position they are, what experience they have in such situations, they take a call whether they are okay taking a business hit or they want to react, make certain calls right now so that at least the business can have a longer runway. But on that note, just wanted to understand a little bit from you guys. Like obviously, edtech is one I think industry which is the layoffs have been at a relatively higher number, right? What other industry do you think would be one of the next ones to probably cut down on costs? I have one in mind, that's why I'm asking the question. Financial. What do you think? I think all these grocery startups, because they have exactly done what a bull market does: massively burn money to acquire a lot of customers, promise a 10-minute delivery. All of them have stopped that value proposition. Blinkit has stopped 10-minute delivery as a value prop on the app. The Big Basket, I don't think they even tried it, right? Because at the end of the day, the entire you have to cover the cost of delivery, you have to cover the cost of warehousing a particular product with every order to become unit economic positive, right? When you make a habit of 10-minute delivery, you're actually making the consumer order smaller basket items, right? But your delivery cost, logistic cost, everything remains the same. It becomes even difficult for you to become unit economic positive, right?
So one guy was arguing with me on this. He was like, have you experienced a 10-minute delivery? It's so cool, right? And that's why these startups will work. I said, good. We sell headphones. If I give it to you a headphone for free, so the experience is great.
Exactly.
Then I give you a headphone and say, take 100 rupees from me also. Like, this is the greatest headphone company in the world.
Exactly.
Doesn't mean it will work as a business.
Yeah.
Right? So, yes, rightly so.
Looking forward to
My question is, are you predicting shutdown of these companies? Or are you predicting that there will be massive layoffs from which department then?
There will be course corrections for sure. There has to be course corrections because the amount of money that these guys have burned opening so many dark stores, it's hardcore rental or hardcore upfront cash that has been locked in building those. Number two, the kind of offers that these guys, there was a massive, just like about 1 or 2 months back, right? They're still giving so many big offers for every order. And this unit economics can never be making sense at this scale. There will be a course revision which will come in the form of marketing campaigns going off, or the areas, the delivery time will definitely work. It cannot be sustained at 10-15 minutes because they will be shutting down some dark stores.
Yeah,
that's my opinion.
What's up,
I
Ramesh?
totally agree with Raj. Plus, I think another sector is going to be crypto. Like after this crypto winter coming in, so many projects are going to shut down and the people will take off from that as well.
I think financial is the segment that I would actually want to discuss because we haven't discussed how loans have been given out in the pandemic. The more the loans are given out, the NPA will happen. And every time a crash happens, it's the financial.
When you say financials, you mean banks?
The banks.
Yeah, I
Because
think
at the end of the day,
BNPL
is backed by either an NBFC or a bank.
I have a feeling BNPL will bust like chickens, like
What will
buy now pay later, all
BNPL,
startups.
okay.
And especially the people who have an offline force to go and for credit checking, going collection of their loans or EMIs, XYZ, because suddenly there is no credit left.
When you have employment problems, the repo rates have, you have discussed repo rates before, but financial is the segment that's going to get hit. We have seen bigger banks even leaving India. The smaller big banks being, over the past 5 years, I think almost every state bank of India, of a different state has been integrated into an SBI. I am not sure of how they are doing their.
I think the banks right
economics
now,
and
I was
data.
just checking the data was pretty strong as of now at least. Like the bank The NPA books, I think they have been the cleanest in what we saw for the last 3-4 years, the fiasco that happened.
has kept it very clean.
Yeah, so I think most of the even the public sector banks, the government has mandated actually that you guys need to start growing and you need to start loaning out more because the credit books are so strong right now. And you need to start. So I think banks as a whole would be okay, and BNPL, I think it's a very small
I don't
segment of
think
the
so.
overall.
I totally disagree with you. I think it's a fiasco waiting to happen. It's 2007. The books
Aren't
were the
banks
strongest.
always a fiasco when
Yeah.
people happen? Because there is no transparency. Like, it's always the case.
If I had a glass in my hand, which I do, but it's not liquor, I would have said cheers.
So on to that, since we are already discussing a lot of layoffs, I would direct this question to Avinash. So Avinash, what can people do who are just entering the job market or who are somewhere in the middle of the job market and having midlife crisis because they've just been laid off? What should people be prepared for in terms of skills that they need to get or essentially make themselves very savvy with, so that they don't face a similar situation again? They're not the first to be laid off from the company and they're able to retain their livelihood. What kind of skills do you think will be absolutely essential for teenagers, kids, or people entering the job market in the next 10, 15, 20 years? And how do you see that evolving?
Chirag, before we get into this, hear me out, I think we should give a segue for this as a news podcast in itself, where what we should do is like give a one-liner each of what we think, but delve bigger into it. Because let's discuss education in itself, right? Like, let's discuss everything which is happening there and move into there was a better article of Yuval Noah Harari, this guy who wrote Sapiens. He had written about 2050 and how the future of education would look like.
Wow.
And I would love to discuss that. And I mean, there are more things to be discussed there. I'll just give a one-liner quick about what we think should be important. One skill, right? Like, and we can do it in a circle, quick. Like, what one skill is, and end the podcast show today.
Sure, that will be very cool. I think we all have a...
To that note,
To be discussed there. And just give a one-liner quick about what we think should be important. One skill, right? Like, and we can do it in a circle, quick. Like, what one skill is, and end the podcast show today.
Sure, that will be very cool. I think we all have a...
to that note, let Avinash.
Yeah, let's start.
Manik for
Let's go.
first of all sabotaging it and then saying, okay, now we can go.
Yeah, Avinash, what are your thoughts?
There's two things that needs to be looked into first. This laying off, whatever it is, temporary or permanent phenomena. I think another discussion that always happens is about AI. How that AI is going to eat up jobs, how automation is going to reduce the dependency of humans, and the rise of machines are going to be there, and people will tend to lose more and more jobs. So that is definitely one whole different angle that always comes up. And the second is that when you are hiring, what are the skills that people actually weigh the candidate on?
So there was one recent article, actually a research by America Succeed, where it was kind of a very elaborate research on the skills that really matter. They have done the job portal analysis of all the major sectors, and they realized that the soft skills became a very crucial part when making a choice, right? People know hard skills. I have myself been through a journey of engineering and product development, but when it's about those durable soft skills, that makes a lot of difference, right? Because on an everyday basis, how are you collaborating with your team? How are you communicating your ideas with them? How are you building your ideas on top of it? Sometimes it becomes a lot of important part of emotional intelligence, that you have to entertain someone's point. Sometimes you have to put your foot down and make your point heard in the crowd. So what I think personally with these three angles, AI being a job eater, I don't believe so. I think the skills which humans per se has is around how they work together as a social being. So, and the social and emotional skills, the SEL, which is primarily called, is the most important parameter in this. And I think that's something which have to look into, that machines will take a time to replicate that emotions first. So I personally think that these skills that will define whether you stay in a company or not as well, because then you can reinvent yourself very quickly. So this happens a lot, right? That whatever you are doing right now, that might not continue perpetually. You have to keep on reinventing yourself to make sure that these skills keep you relevant for the company and for the society. So if I summarize all, I think the durable soft skills will be the future in this way.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So because I've always felt that the last skills that are going to be disrupted is going to be much more human, like critical thinking, decision making, creativity. How would a sentient machine which is conscious of itself disrupt these skills? First, I mean, there's a long way towards consciousness and recreating conscious systems. So I think these would be the end of the or the top of the pyramid before machines become 100% self-aware and we are in Terminator again. So,
I mean, I will add to you guys. I think that's the long-term skill which should be taught, and learning how to learn, essentially how different mental models should be utilized and how you can use them in your daily life would be really helpful. So understanding things from the basics in every subject is the key. I think there was a lecture of Richard Feynman, the great physicist who did the Manhattan Project. So he did like 3 pages of maths where he went from the very basic to the most extreme. And the way he does it is understanding the logic behind everything. And at any point of step, if you remove the logic, right, and he goes from numbers to calculus and the whole arithmetic. So if you do understand the basics, you're done. You can form your own decisions, you can map things out. So how do you learn at a faster pace is what I'm thinking of. But if you're looking at a very short-term perspective, because we're also discussing people who are laying off, if you're an engineer, I think it's good to do data structures and actually start coding again. Coding is still going to be the aim thing for the next 3 to 4 years, which I can totally see. Beyond that, I have no idea, because the amount of no-code platforms that are coming in, that you will have to reinvent yourself again. But if you're only looking for the next 2 months and you have to upskill yourself to get a job, code.
Yeah, I think hard skills, I kind of agree. I think it's either data science or machine learning in short term. And soft skills in short term would be around, I think, what kind of Avinash was also mentioning, right? So around communication, how you're able to, especially when you're going to be out of job, it's very important. How are you communicating? How are you working on soft skills? Because just because when you get an opportunity, at least you are one notch higher in terms of making that interaction, making that bond with the person who's interviewing you. For long term, I think when you talk about AI kind of merging, it's super long term. I think one skill that really, obviously soft skills would be the ones that will sustain the most, whether it's critical thinking, etc. One thing that I think would matter the most is how the human interaction kind of thing, right? How do you speak with the folks that are below you, or the people that you have to get it work done by? Those kind of, how you form those bonds, right? Those are skills that are very difficult that an AI could ever take up, right? So those are the things that actually play a very important role in how we all function as a company, as a team right now. Just that we don't realize their importance. Those would be and those are skills that we may develop, right? People who don't have them, they're actually not good leaders, right? And the results shows up. So I think those are skills long term that could actually differentiate.
Also agree with Saransh, product management, product strategizing, company management, because I think doing work is one skill, but getting work done is a whole different skill. So totally agree with you, Saransh, on that.
Paras, what's your view? Looking forward to it.
So, like rightly pointed out, layoffs, reason keep changing. Layoffs still keep happening historically. So today it's because of X reason, tomorrow can be because of AI. In fact, it will be because a lot of it will be because of AI. So I'll give my both short-term perspective and long-term perspective. In short term, I think if you're tough to hire, you're tough to fire. It's as simple as that. Answering what do I do that makes me tough to fire, it's a trickier question to answer. A simpler question to answer is what makes you tough to hire. What makes you tough to hire is if you have a specific skill that is rare. So having specific skills that are rare is something that would make you very tough to hire and at the same time tough to fire. So you see what is it that everyone has and very few people do, which is valued a lot. For example, PMs. If you go on Twitter, search PM, product manager, probably you'll see hiring posts. So clearly something is happening. Why is so much hiring happening? Maybe because there are not enough quality PMs available. Listen to what a CEO is struggling with. Every founder has a problem of hiring, right? After funding or alongside funding, it's the biggest problem. So what is it that they have a problem in hiring? That's a good perspective on where the specific skills are missing. So this is a short-term perspective. You can put your lens to it and figure it out. In the long term, yes, like you Chirag pointed out, skills that are very tough to be replicated by an AI will be very relevant. Creativity is my biggest bet on it. And when I say creativity, I just don't restrict it to arts, performance arts, but I think cooking is also creativity because there are just so many permutations and combinations to it. And Manik is a chef, so Manik would agree. So these things, and I understand, like a lot of people say creativity is big, but I have a extended view of that it will not be relevant to have those skills to be relevant in the world.
Yeah.
Like it's not for employability that you will need these skills. It is for sanity that you will need these skills.
Wow.
Because if AI really takes over, like theoretically it's supposed to be, a lot of people, maybe including us, will lose purpose in life.
Yeah.
So when you lose purpose in life, where do you find your purpose? You have to refine it. Suddenly money making, what if money making is not the purpose anymore?
Yeah.
What do you do then? That is when things like creativity, you do podcast, you do dance, you do cooking.
That's where your passions kick in.
Right?
Avinash.
Like,
I think the
generally
meaning of
in long
Paris
term-
has just put up, a whole spanner in things. Meaning of life.
Yeah.
If we start discussing meaning of life, we have to call Osho on the podcast next. Or
No,
Sadhguru. Or
no,
maybe,
but summarizing what I said, in long term, I think more than employability, sanity will be the reason why we'll have to upskill ourselves. And in short term, like he's equivalent, tough to hire someone.
That just gives me an idea. We should definitely do a podcast on futurism where we are just going hardcore predicting the next 30, 40 year, 50 year trends.
and we can take
how we see the world,
industries, right? Like we can take towards
Yeah, we can go industry by industry because this, what you just said, put me back historically, where as soon as we start to buy all these tunnel bearing machines who would dig tunnels, right? People would think that, hey, my shovels would be of no use and I would go out of jobs, and then it reminds me that
before industrial revolution.
before the industrial revolution, the mayor said who these people went to that, hey, you're going to make us lose the job. So he said that, hey, I gave you the shovels, I didn't give you spoons, right? And that would employ 10x more people. So I think people are definitely going to move towards a lot of creative jobs where the kind of jobs they'll be entering would be not for taking care of the machines, but much more towards taking care of fellow humans. Because for progress, at one point of time, I believe in the next millennia or so, we will be liabilities rather than humans would be liabilities, and progress would be much more driven by machines unless we merge together.
Liabilities to whom?
Yeah.
The planet.
To progress.
To progress. To progress.
I think
progress
like-
of consciousness.
But who will
Wow.
be driving progress?
Machines. Unless we merge with them. And then we become one. So and that is why I said we should do a
Let's
problem.
part
Yeah,
the next
yeah,
podcast.
let's
we
find
should
it out.
definitely do this.
I think
So
it's about time.
I wanted to go towards transhumanism, but I think we will.
And I struck the right chords.
Yeah, Paris. Again, cheers.
Perfect. I think we've had a good one. On that note, guys, looking forward to your feedback and subscribes and shares.